The Denver Broncos and the Seattle Seahawks will meet in Week 3 here. This preview for the preview of the Super Bowl rematch between the Broncos and Seattle. And Seattle comes in with a record of 1-1. The Broncos at 2-0. The Broncos taking care of business in the first 2 games. Not overly impressive, but good enough to win their first 2 here out of the gate. And to me, this is the game they were looking forward to in the first quarter of their schedule. Why? Because, look, they got embarrassed in the Super Bowl last year. I don't think there's any way around that. And as they look at that tape in the offseason, and as they make personnel changes, more importantly in the offseason, to me, a lot of them were directed at getting more physical and being able to stand more toe-to-toe with a team like Seattle from a physical standpoint. When you talk about DeMarcus Ware and, of course, TJ Ward and Aqib Talib, all efforts in getting more physical and more skilled on the defensive side of the ball. Does it pay off for them here in Week 3? Do they see fruits from that labor? I think is a big thing to watch in this one. From an offensive standpoint, they get Welker back. They have Clady now, who was not in the mix there in the Super Bowl last year. And, of course, when you play Seattle, we all know it's extremely loud up there. Can they keep those defensive ends, Averill and Bennett, off of Peyton Manning's back? Can Peyton Manning get in a good rhythm and get in a good flow? Something that is very hard for any quarterback to do up in Seattle. And because of that, and because this offense is so heavily predicated on timing, with Emmanuel Sanders in the mix, someone who doesn't have a ton of experience with Manning, I'm interested to see how he does this week. Of course, Welker coming back from the injury, a little less worried about him from a timing standpoint, but we'll see that. And also, look, can they get any semblance of a running game going with C.J. Anderson and, of course, Monty Ball? Because, look, San Diego was successful running the ball in spots, throwing short passes to keep the chains moving, and held the ball for 42 minutes on Seattle. And, they didn't dominate the Seahawks. They only won that game 30-21. So I think especially at Seattle, to have any kind of chance against this defense, you need to control the ball, and you need to control it for long periods of time. But then again, the other flip side comes in. Seattle tends to cause more turnovers at home. And if you're relying on these 11, 12, 13-play drives, it leaves more time for them to be able to make something happen. So I think no matter which way you look at it, Denver's up against it in this game, just like everyone else that comes into Seattle. Seattle, from an offensive standpoint, as usual, can they be physical like they were and push around Denver? And can Lynch, have a good game as a result? And if not, I think you'll see Jermaine Kearse, obviously Percy Harvin, who Broncos had no answer for in the Super Bowl, become heavily involved. And you look at, again, Harvin in particular, I don't see where Denver's defense has gotten better to handle a weapon like that. I know TJ Ward is an upgraded safety, but is he really a cover guy that can match up with Harvin? I don't think Talib is the kind of guy that can keep up with Harvin either. So look for Harvin to be the X factor in this game, just like he was in the Super Bowl. And look, I think it's all going to come down to the timing of that Denver offense and if they're able to handle the crowd noise and get into a good rhythm, much like San Diego was last week. If they're not, I think this one gets out of hand. And I think naturally Seattle off a loss at home is going to come out with their hair on fire. That place is going to be rocking. This is a team with a tremendous amount of pride that I think was hurt last week in how they lost that game to San Diego. So look for them to come out with guns a-blazing, and look for that to have a direct result on this game in my mind. I like Seattle -4. Look, I have to see a team that's predicated on timing and a good offense and communication. I have to see them go in there and compete in a game before I'll pick against the Seahawks. These kind of teams typically don't even compete up there in Seattle. But we'll see, because as much as it's a pride game for Seattle coming off a loss last year, it's even more so for Denver, who got humiliated in that Super Bowl last year. It's hard to sometimes factor that in, especially when you have players that didn't play in the Super Bowl playing very key parts in this one. So, again, I like Seattle -4. Let me know what you think. Hit me up in the comments. Hit me up on Twitter. Be sure to subscribe. Previewing every game every week. Always talking the news of the day. Thanks for listening. Have a great night.